Thank you all so much again for joining us. My name is Melly Khamvongsa, and I am the Vice President of Development for Alzheimer's Los Angeles. Welcome to our first of three, our speaker series. Today we will be talking specifically about caregiving, and this is part of our series of combating inequity, Alzheimer's LA at the forefront. Albert, if you could please share the next slide, that would be great. Just a few reminders for everyone to please mute yourself during the session. If you do have any questions, please use the chat feature to ask any questions, and we will try our best to answer all of those questions at the end. We are recording this session, so we will send that out to all the participants via email. And again, just for the last few that have joined us, thank you so much. My name is Melly Khamvongsa. I'm the Director of Development. Albert, if you could please go on to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you all that have registered. Today we will be talking specifically about caregiving in crisis and the impacts of COVID-19 on caregivers and families. A little bit about our organization. We started in 1981, and our mission is improving the lives of local families affected by Alzheimer's and dementia by increasing awareness, delivering effective programs and services, providing compassionate support, and advocating for quality care and a cure. I'm very proud to be a part of this organization and a team that has seamlessly pivoted to providing online and virtual services for all of our clients. We are so excited to launch this free summer speaker series to our community. This is the first time we've done something like this, and our hope is that we will be a resource for you. After our speakers finish, we will be sure to share our contact information at the end of this session. As I mentioned, we will also be recording these topics, and they will be available to you via email. Today's topic is about COVID-19 and how many of our families and caregivers now find themselves still in crisis. Today, we are going to have an intimate conversation with our very own Director of Clinical Services, an amazing care counselor, and I am also very excited to share that we have a caregiver who has agreed to share her personal story. Next slide, please, Albert. Zina is the Director of Clinical Services at Alzheimer's Los Angeles. She has her graduate degree in social work from California State University, Long Beach. In her role, Zina provides care consultation services to family members and friends caring for a person with dementia, ongoing management and supervision of the clinical care team, and oversight of the ALZ LA helpline. She has previously worked in the field of hospice care and bereavement and has experience with the aging population, facilitating support groups, providing community education, and developing programs, as well as providing supervision and training for volunteers and professionals. Zina is a true advocate for caregivers and is committed to helping people better understand Alzheimer's disease and the related dementias. Tori, our next speaker, has been working as a care counselor at Alzheimer's Los Angeles for 2.5 years. Tori provides emotional support, care planning, counseling, disease education, and referrals to additional community resources to family and friends that are caring for a person with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. She also facilitates 2 support groups for people diagnosed with early stages of Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment, as well as support groups for family caregivers. Katy Pinto was born in Honduras and raised in South Bay. She earned her PH.D. at UCLA and is currently the Graduate Coordinator and Director of Older Adult Center at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. She specializes in the sociology of the family, studies paid and unpaid labor, marginal and precarious work, and higher education. Katy found Alzheimer's Los Angeles late last year and took the Savvy Caregivers Express class to help her better care for her mother. Katy was able to build a community partnership with Alzheimer's LA by bringing workshops to the Dominguez Hills campus. Finally, Jackie Alm, Director of Development for Alzheimer's LA, is also here to support our speaker series for the next 3 weeks. Thank you so much, Zina, Tori, and Katy, for joining us this afternoon. Zina, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As Melly said, my name is Zina Paris. I'm the Director of Clinical Services, and I've been here for 9 years now. My role is basically to oversee the care counseling program and our helpline. And I just want to let you know a little bit about our care counseling program. All of our staff are master's level professionals, and they work directly with the families who are caring for a person with Alzheimer's or another dementia. Care counselors talk every day with family members about how best to cope with the symptoms of dementia, whether it's dealing with challenges in behavior or learning new ways of communicating or finding resources and creating a care plan. With the advent of the pandemic, the care counselors have been a critical part of the support system for caregivers. When the stay-at-home orders came in March, they all started working from home and immediately set about reaching out to all their clients to see how they were doing and what they needed. So many of the families were afraid to go out and risk getting infected. Many of them also were struggling to get basic necessities such as groceries, soap, and toilet paper. Family members who had jobs were laid off or furloughed, and families that were already low income suffered greatly. It was also a huge change for some caregivers whose person with dementia used to have in-home care or go to an adult day program. And suddenly the caregiver was responsible for their person 24 hours a day. Everyone had a unique situation, and we tried to respond to each one's needs, whether by providing a caregiver for respite, money for necessities, or ideas on how to structure their days. The care counselors were also responding on a daily basis to people who called our helpline. Callers to our helpline could be caregivers, they could be community members, and they all need information, support, and resources too. And they may never have even reached out for help before. This may be their first time. We might speak with them just once, or perhaps more than once, just to get them through an immediate crisis or a tough moment. Or it may turn out that they're able to benefit from an ongoing relationship with a care counselor. We've also always had many support groups throughout the area where caregivers were able to come together and share their experiences and get support from one another. During the time of the coronavirus, we have moved to offering virtual support groups on a daily basis at all different times so that people can join in whenever works best for them. Sometimes there are technical challenges, but many people who were never able to attend before, perhaps due to time constraints or to distance, have found a new way to get help. One of our care counselors, as Melly mentioned, is here today with us, Tori, and she's going to speak more about her work with the families and what the caregiving experience has been like during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Hi everyone, as Zina and Melly mentioned, my name is Tori and I'm one of the care counselors here at Alzheimer's LA. And so in my role, I get to work one-on-one and in groups with family members and friends that are caring for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, just to provide support, disease education, resources, case management, whatever the family members might need to better care for their loved ones. And then as Zina mentioned, at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and stay-at-home orders, myself and the rest of the care counselors continued to offer that same ongoing support to all of our family clients just from home. So working with them to meet whatever needs they might have as they're caring for someone during this crazy time. So at the start of the pandemic, we actually got to spend time reaching out to each of our care counseling clients just to provide a check-in and to see, to assess sort of what their different needs might be, you know, as things were changing, to see if we needed to adapt our care plan to better support them in this new situation that we all found ourselves in. As to be expected, you know, a lot of our clients were really in very intense situations, really needing a high level of emotional support as they were navigating this crisis for themselves and then also for the person that they're caring for. I think Zina mentioned, you know, a lot of them were concerned about possibly their family member or loved one getting sick with the COVID-19, things like that, losing jobs, financial insecurity, losing their different care plans. A lot of our families had their loved ones either in day programs, they had in-home care, they're in facilities, and all of these things have been disrupted or changed by the pandemic. Whether their loved one was in a facility and they can no longer visit them, they no longer could go to their day program. So now this family member is trying to figure out how to provide 24/7 care at home without help. People unsure if they want to bring in-home care, what their comfort level is. Do they need the help, or are they too worried about the COVID-19? So we've just been really focusing on meeting each individual with where they're at, assessing what their needs are, making a custom care plan for them as we always do. So really letting the clients take the lead, and we're here to just bring our disease expertise and support them with whatever decisions they're comfortable with and however we can as they're adapting to the changing circumstances. We've really been able to support people as they're dealing with isolation, anxiety, depression, all of these different emotions that come up with being home. A lot of people are just home alone with their loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's all day. So really dealing with feelings of loneliness or lack of support. So even just doing general check-in calls too, just to see how people are doing and to be a friendly voice on the other end of the phone for some of our clients that might be really alone right now. Navigating anxieties relating recently to going back to work, going back to kind of normal life for a little bit. So really just working with people to provide support and to help them navigate everything going on, and to really keep it individual, because as with dementia in general, a lot of times people's needs are very individual to their own circumstances, and that's been the same throughout this pandemic. And we're just really focused on providing very individualized support to meet people where they're at as they're facing these high intensity situations and crises. So thank you, everybody.
So I'm not sure if you just want me to jump in, Melly, but we wanted to really give a good amount of time to Katy to tell us about what her caregiving situation is like. So I'll be throwing out a couple of questions, letting Katy run with it. And I just think it's really very impactful to hear directly from a caregiver what it's been like. So Katy, welcome here again to be with us today. And can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be your mother's caregiver?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm excited to see everyone and so grateful that you guys have, created this space for us to talk about this. I really became a caregiver probably, it was a slow transition because my mother and I have lived together for quite some time. But around 2016, 2017, I was at home more, and I started to just notice some changes. I didn't really quite understand what they were at that time. But I just started to notice, that my mom had kind of started to change a little bit in her independence. She had kind of stopped going out. She had stopped driving. And I didn't really quite know where to place it. And she started feeling a little bit more uncomfortable being alone. But in that year, I also got married. And my partner, my husband, moved in with us probably a year after that in 2018. And by then I had started noticing a little bit more and more progression. But it was really, I think, at the end of 2018 where I really just, I started to say there's something going on. My aunt also passed in 2018 from early onset of Alzheimer's, and she was diagnosed in her early 50s, and my mom is older. And at that time, I just really started to notice like weight loss and not being able to take care, you know, of herself. And I just started stepping in. I really just started doing what I thought needed to be done, feeding, you know, reminders. And there was a lot of learning on my part, trying to figure out where the bar was, if I could make food and leave it, or if they needed to be prompted. And so all through 2019, I really just started to see a progression, and I was really just burning myself out. So I think I had been caregiving since, you know, 2016 in some form, but didn't really understand what I was doing until I started to burn out. And really late last year, as somebody mentioned, I got connected to Alzheimer's LA. I was like at the end of my rope and I really didn't know what was happening. And I started going to workshops and really starting to understand what was likely going on in our house. And, you know, my mom is very young, and in my view, you know, she's 74, I think, right now, and really physically fit. She was very active, always going on walks, and it was just, you know, really hard for me, still sometimes really hard for me to connect with what was going on with her. So.
It's interesting how people don't often identify with themselves as being a caregiver early on, and that the onset is gradual, just kind of like you describe. So I think that does happen with a lot of caregivers in their kind of journey to becoming a caregiver and identifying as a caregiver. So let me turn a little bit to the pandemic. You know, it's been 4 months now that we've basically been shut down, and I know, you know, you've been at home, your partner's been at home, your mom has been at home. Over these 4 months, can you think about what you've noticed that's changed and either been more challenging or maybe even a little bit easier for her and for you as a caregiver?
You know, I still kind of have the date in my head when we stopped going out, you know, like normal. And for us, it really was around like a March 13th.
Yes.
That, you know, I work at Dominguez Hills, and we were actively thinking about what we were going to do around that time. And that's when I was like, okay, that's it. We're done. We're not going out anymore. And one of the really big things that has changed is that these activities that I used to do to provide a distraction, to, you know, just like our daily routine or our weekly routine just really stopped. So I don't really like to advertise, but I'll advertise to this group that I don't live very far from my campus. So one thing that we used to do is we used to go for a walk around the campus. I would take my little dog. My mom would complain the whole way, and then we would walk for a little bit around the campus. But once they closed the campus, I was like, okay, well, we shouldn't go to campus. And we used to go to Costco, and we used to go shopping for groceries, and that was an activity that we could both do. And then those really became like the hot spots of, I need to avoid those places at all costs. So it really then became like, oh, how am I going to provide like an entertainment or, you know, some activity for us? And it, you know, in one regard too, for my mom, it was really, she was happy. She was like, oh, you're home all the time now. This is great. And I didn't have to go anywhere, and I still had to work, but my meetings were just on a computer, and that was great. And so in one way, one thing that changed is we used to have a lot of conflict around me leaving the house. And there's a lot of anxiety of where you're going, when are you going to be back, and a lot of buildup to what it meant for me to leave and when I'd come back. And that went away. And so in a lot of ways, that was very comforting to her. But, you know, definitely not being able to go out became, you know, a source of like boredom for her, needing to go out and do something. And then having people come to the house. So we're very fortunate. I've been able to get grocery delivery. Eventually, our city even started to do a grocery delivery program. But then there was a lot of kind of anxiety around who are these people knocking on our door and leaving stuff. So there was a transition for that. And also just a transition of like, why are you on a computer all day and you're home? Like, we're not watching TV, we're not doing anything else. And so that was, you know, that was a transition. I think you both mentioned the fact that now that Alzheimer's LA has provided support groups online, that actually for me was just, I mean, a lifeline. So I actually in maybe October, November, took a class, a Savvy Caregiver class, which was really great. And in that class, they said, you know, you could have a care counselor. And so I called and I was like, I need help. I need someone. And I was connected with someone. And then all of this started to happen. And all of these behaviors that had been going on that I didn't know what to do with were kind of heightened. And my favorite example, I think right now, is bananas. Because bananas were a big deal in the house. They were getting thrown away when they didn't look quite right. It might have been Tori that when we first met, I was like, we're getting into fights about bananas and there's COVID and I can't even get a banana and like they're being thrown away. Like, what do I do? And we sort of talked about like a strategy, but it's like, so I just remember that anxiety because we were not able to get groceries regularly. We were kind of freaking out about paper use and like these things that were already little issues before, you know, just like using lots of paper towels and keeping them in a purse and keeping them everywhere. We were like, you can't do that now. There will be no paper towels. You know, we started to kind of freak out. Because we were like, you can't even go to the market. You can't get paper towels. It was, for me, a lot of anxiety. But then, you know, I don't know if it was Tori or somebody else said, you know, you can do support groups online. And I was like, I can. And that was really something that I needed to do earlier in 2019, but I couldn't find time to drive somewhere or it would conflict with work. And now I can kind of hop on a Zoom call and there's no commute time. And that's, you know, for me, that's been fantastic. So that's been a great change. And I think in other ways too, being at home has made me see smaller changes that might have been harder to kind of identify had I just been going to work. So, you know, I've noticed like smaller behaviors around being able to turn on the TV. It was an activity that before COVID, my mom was kind of doing on her own, turning on the TV, turning it off, putting on a show that she liked. And I noticed over this time that it kind of just went away and, you know, she needed more attention for us to be able to provide that if she wanted to. So yeah, it's been a lot. A lot of the things that you all mentioned around just also trying to make sure that the news isn't on and creating like more anxiety and learning about how to talk about COVID and wearing masks and not wearing masks. That's actually been a little bit of a challenge, because when we go out, she doesn't really want to wear a mask. She doesn't really interact with other people. So if she sees somebody else, she's like, hello. She's super friendly, and she is not going to keep that physical distance. And, a stranger doesn't really realize that. And so there's a lot more to manage around that too.
So it sounds like it's been a little stressful for you just trying to juggle a lot of different things. And you mentioned kind of being a little bit now of the entertainment committee because you don't have the opportunity to go out of the house and do your regular activities. Mm-hmm. And so can I ask, how do you kind of balance work and personal life and caregiving during the pandemic? What has that been like for you?
I have to say I'm not doing a very good job at it. But, work has now 3 months or 4 months into with work, I think I've started to figure out like what's happening, that I think I felt like once before, I think I've probably said in one of my support groups that I just could not hear myself think, that I was just like, I couldn't hear myself think. I couldn't really think about, oh, this needs to get done at work. And so I felt like I was behind with everything. The one thing that I was doing was making sure we had food at the house and, that we ate, like that was it. And now I think I've been learning that if I need to do some work that's really important, and if I want to have some time, I try to get up now before my mom gets up. Although I feel like she's figured it out and now she's getting up a little bit earlier. But, I've been trying to give myself 2 hours. For me, 2 hours to work is like, wow, like I can't even believe I can say that. But, and it's usually before she's up, or if she is up, it's when my husband is making breakfast. And that activity has given me time to balance work. I did use it once to go for a little walk with my dog, and that was nice self-care. Zoom has been a source of like adjustment for her. But what's been really great is that I can say, oh, I have a work meeting, and she'll let me connect with friends on Zoom. Me being on my cell phone or talking on the phone has been a real problem. Just, it's like another thing that's taking away attention from her. But I do tell my friends that I'm just going to sound terrible, but I'm like, whatever it is you're feeling during COVID, like that's what I've been feeling in 2017, 18, 19, and now. Because I have been feeling like I haven't been able to go out. I haven't been able to do the things that I used to do. Go out to dinner, go to restaurants. I haven't been able to do that for a really long time. So in some ways, some of my friends have been a little bit more sympathetic, and they've reached out to me a little bit more, and they're like, hi, how are you doing? And oh my gosh, like I have my kids at home and I can't imagine what you feel like now. And so I've been able to, for me, like connecting with my friends is really important. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes there's a price to pay for me being on Zoom. It causes a lot more like anxiety with my mom. But I have managed to do that, and that's actually been really great. And I've actually had some friends like drop things off, like someone dropped off lemons at the house and just left it on the porch. I was like, that's great. Like, I love lemons and we need to make lemonade and whatever. So that's been helpful. And I have family members that have started now to kind of, FaceTime with us, and that's been nice. I think I wish that I was a little bit better in figuring out this, like the time. So before COVID, my partner and I, we did have a caregiver. We had just started experimenting with getting a caregiver, and it allowed me to go to work. It allowed my partner to have some free time, and it allowed us to have like a date night. And now we really haven't had that. Sometimes it's just, I'm like, here's some wine. This is our date night, So it's like much smaller things and maybe lowering my expectations. I was like, we gotta do a projection and like pretend like we're out at the movies. And he's like, are you serious? No, like that's not gonna happen. So I'm like, here's some wine. It's just like really been a change in that. But I think I've started to, the one thing that I've mentioned that's also helped me, because I am tied a lot to my computer, is that I have been putting calendar updates just for my caregiving activities, which honestly is usually around food and snacks. And that's been really helpful, because then I can see, oh, I have a 2-hour meeting. Hello, we got to pay attention to the fact that my mom's going to need a snack or she's going to be hangry. And so that's helped with some of the caregiving. But, the thing that's really for me been so helpful has been being able to log in and talk to, yourself and to Tori and to other people who are going through this. A lot of times it's really hard to gauge like where it is, like, am I being difficult? Do I not understand this illness or what's happening? And being able to jump on a support group, as much as my friends might have sympathy for like what I'm going through, they don't really understand. I am in therapy as well, and I have been for a while. And I feel like even my therapist has limits because she doesn't understand. And the folks in the support group really do understand. And we're all in different stages in our caregiving. And so my mom is, early, I think, early or middle stage. And other folks can share like, oh, that's exactly what my mom was doing. And here's what we tried. And that has just, that's helped me. That's really helped me think and helped us have less conflict in the house. There were just days when everybody was crying. I was crying, she was crying. My husband wanted to cry. My dog was like, I can't stand it, too much stress here. Everybody was stressed out. And now we've had much better days because I've been able to try to strategize and think about different ways. And yeah, so that's a lot.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. And I think, you touched on a couple things that I think were really important about how you get support for yourself, through your friends, through support groups, through therapy, through care counseling. And I don't want to speak for you, but what would you say has helped you the most during these 4 months? I know things have kind of it's been a transition, it's been, you've moved kind of from one place to a place where you're kind of handling things a little bit differently now. But what do you think has helped you the most?
I think that what's changed has been being able to check in with a group of people through the support groups on behaviors that I just didn't know what to do with. So for other folks that are caregivers, and I'm not ashamed to admit, but we were having a lot of conflict. There was just a lot of tears in the house. And with the pandemic, there were kind of no outlets, no like distraction of, oh, let's go for a drive. And so being able to check in with people who could give me ideas and who could give me feedback. So, I talk too much. I do. I'm a professor. Like, that's my job. And I want to try to solve things and I want to try to fix things. And I'm still in this very early place where I can see the illness, but I still see my parent, and that creates a clash. And so I'm learning to change. But I'm really learning to change because I'm getting feedback from people that are like, have you tried this? And then I try it. And then I can tell someone I tried it and it didn't work, or I tried it and it did work. And I'm going to keep trying it. And then the feedback too, it's just like learning. I think Zina, you told me, well, just because you try something, it's not going to work 100% of the time. And so giving myself like that permission, I guess, to be wrong and to keep trying. And that, I internalize things a lot. I feel like I'm not doing a good job, and I feel like I could do things better, and I want to keep her calm and happy, and I feel like I fail sometimes when I don't. So being able to check in with people who are like, oh, maybe this is just a progression of the illness, and maybe, everybody's different, but have you tried this or have you tried that? And that's been really helpful. That's just given me like hope that I did not have. And I was already hopeless before COVID. Like I was really feeling like I wasn't doing a great job. And so just having a group of people, and you wish sometimes that those group of people could be your family, but I'm the youngest child in my family, and a lot of my family lives far, and they don't really know what's going on either. So that's just made a world of difference, which, I never maybe thought that it could before. I thought, oh, I could do some research. I could look online, and it's not the same as talking to other people who have gone through this.
It's a real testament, I think, to the power of support groups, right?
Yeah.
It really is. And it also sounds like in some ways your own thinking has undergone a change, and that you're not approaching situations in the same way anymore. You're trying to look at them differently, because one of the things we talk about at Alzheimer's LA a lot is, you're not going to be able to change the person with dementia. They no longer are able to, come to that realization that something needs to change and then put it into place and change what they're doing, but that you yourself have to make the change. And that sounds to me like something that's been kind of evolving for you.
Yeah. And I think too, we've talked in somebody else in a support group. I mean, it just seems so basic, but somebody in the support group that I attend with Tori, she made a comment and said, oh, I've been going to a support group every day of the week. She's like, I was like, well, why don't I do that? And last week was a hard week. So I went to 2 support groups, and I was like, oh, I really needed that, but I'm like, why don't I give myself the permission to ask for more help? Why do I think I have to figure all of this stuff out on my own? And I think being able to talk to other people and seeing how, like, I think in some ways too, people understand, other caregivers understand how wild this is. Like, being able to put yourself in somebody else's world, as you say, really it's like just put that to the side and together. And it works sometimes and it doesn't. And it's other people in support groups understand that. And I think they understand, at least for me, that it's so early. There's like a sense of loss that you go through daily, which is so different than if somebody, passes maybe unexpectedly. Sometimes there's things that I'm upset, and I don't realize that it's because these things that I assumed would happen in my life with my mother are not going to happen. And it's just at whatever moment I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, that door is kind of closed, and it's this sense of loss that's there sometimes, and other people in support groups understand that, and they're experiencing it. And so you feel, at least for me, I've been feeling really isolated for quite some time. And so not feeling isolated has just, like helped me feel like, okay, I can do this. Even if it's one day that I'm like, I can do this. Because there's other days that I'm like, I can't do this. What am I doing? And we were in the middle of thinking of adult daycare for my mom too, which people say is good and it's good social activity. And COVID kind of just stopped that. And so, even the things that you had hoped, that the kind of care that I had hoped my mom could have, is kind of on hold right now until we figure that out.
It's really a different world that we live in right now. Mm-hmm. And what I'm really glad about is that support groups have been so helpful to you, and I'm sure to all the other people who attend them. And, that community and that camaraderie is something that you can't find elsewhere. And even, like you said, they know what it feels to be losing your parents slowly. And, those little daily losses that pile up, and even the losses of, like you said, of what might not be in the future, things that, that you may have wanted to be able to talk about with your mother, or experiences that you wanted to share that maybe you no longer will be able to. But the people in the support group are also experiencing that. And so I think it's just amazing and incredible that people are able to share in a way that's so meaningful. Mm-hmm. And I want to be conscious of our time, and I want to be able to turn it over to Melly, but I want to thank Katy for being so open and sharing with us your experiences. I think, it means a lot to me. I'm sure it means a lot to the people here too. And I will let Melly take over from here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zina and Katy and Tori. I think one of the takeaways from what we just heard is that COVID-19 has been a challenge for all of us in the last 4 months, but it's something extra that our caregivers have to live with. We don't know what the future is going to bring, for any of us, but I know that Alzheimer's LA, Zina, Tori, and our dedicated frontline care counselors are here for you, everyone on this call, and just the broader community. Zina and Tori, you mentioned, we're providing individualized client support care. What does that mean? I know you mentioned some examples, but if you could elaborate on the client-focused support care, and also the way we, again, are all balancing our needs, but are helping caregivers like Katy find that balance.
So Tori, I'll let you answer this since you do this work every day.
Hi. Yeah, so just kind of to further explain what our individualized care looks like. Basically, we let the clients that we work with lead the conversation, lead with what their needs are. So when I'm talking to someone, I'm not going to necessarily assume what's going on, what I think is going to be the best solution for them, or what I think they're going to need. But I kind of approach it from the angle of listening to where they're coming from, to what they think their needs are, really focusing on their own self-determination. And I think a lot of times, just in general, for people that are caring for someone, people really struggle with kind of feeling pressure to choose the right care plan or to do the right thing when they're, looking at this menu of options that they can select from. And people might struggle with guilt or, trying to choose a decision that will make everyone else happy. So really just the individualized support comes from letting the caregivers choose what's going to be best for them and supporting them to make sure that not only are they choosing the best option for them, but that their loved one they're caring for is going to be safe and all of their needs are going to be met, but not trying to do a cookie cutter response to everyone that we work with, but really see what response or what plans and options will be best for each individual. So every conversation looks differently, every care plan looks different, I think, and just in general with Alzheimer's, I think that's important, and especially with, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic, I think it's more important than ever because, you know, what's right for some people, maybe it's still having a caregiver come in, that's not going to be the best option for another person, they're not comfortable with it, so how can I best equip them to care for their loved one without extra help and to help them find ways to not burn out, to take care of themselves, things like that. So I'm really just trying to individualize it.
Thank you so much, Tori. And if anyone from the audience has a question, please type that question in the chat feature. We've received a couple of questions, Zina, Tori, and Katy, that I would like to ask. The first one can be for Zina or Tori. The question is, my husband, 87, has been exhibiting many signs, but refuses to discuss with his doctor and me. I need techniques to cope with his behavioral changes. We are in San Bernardino County. Do you have a counterpart here, or do you deal with concerns from people who are not Los Angeles residents?
So we actually will work with anybody that needs us and calls us and contacts us and reaches out. Although our general area is LA County, you know, we again want to be helpful to anybody, and we certainly have helped people from out of state and you know, all sorts of places. So you know, I think that probably just in this particular situation, I think it would be important to have a conversation with one of the care counselors. One of the ways to reach out to us is through our helpline. And I know Melly will give you that information at the end, how to contact our helpline and how to contact us individually. Because I think it is a very common thing that certainly people who are showing signs of dementia may not always have insight into the fact that there is a problem going on or there is something going on. And, you know, I think that I would say kind of off the top of my head that it doesn't make any sense to try to discuss it with them, to argue about it with them, or to try to convince them that there is an issue. But I think in regard to what avenue then you want to take after that, I think it would take, again, more of what Tori's talking about, that kind of individualized approach to see what works best for your family. But I absolutely do want you to know that, that it is very common that people don't have the insight into the disease process, and we can't convince them of it. And so it's better not even to try to do that. And hopefully, again, we can have a longer conversation about that offline.
Thank you, Zina. And a follow-up question to that, do you provide assistance with qualifying for Medicaid, not Medicare?
Yeah, so we are familiar with the process for applying for Medi-Cal, which is the California version of Medicaid. And, you know, there are some people that we have that we consult also when there are cases of people whose income is very close to the boundary. There's also something called in-home supportive services, which can be very valuable to people who qualify for Medi-Cal because the state actually pays for some help in the home. And while it may not be as much as you might feel you need, it is still something that can be quite valuable. So yes, we can help with the Medi-Cal process.
Thank you, Zina. And now a question for either Tori, Katy, or Zina. the statement slash question. I think a lot of what Katy said about wanting to fix things and being a problem solver personally really resonates with a lot of people. I wonder if Katy, Tori, or Zina have any advice on how to face a diagnosis of a loved one when they are used to being able to fix things. How do you get used to giving up control?
Have I really given up control? I don't know. You know, I have to say, I've been trying to prioritize where that energy to fix things really needs to go. So, like, as an example, oh, I didn't even mention, like, COVID has made getting medications, like, that was very stressful. But thankfully, like, I was able to figure it out. But I thought, well, I need to be in control. I need to, you know, get a longer prescription, you know, it needs to be 90 days instead of making me go out there every month. And I said, this is something I can tackle. I can be an advocate for my mom with the institutions that, you know, she can be getting lost or unseen from, right? So I try to funnel that energy to get her support that she can't navigate. You know, I think I also am trying that just daily, I'm trying to be like, this is, you know, this is the illness. And I'm trying to understand like the the voice, my thought process that comes into, you know, wanting to control. So we have an ongoing debate and discussion about a beanie that is much loved. My mom wears this beanie all the time, and I don't want her to wear the beanie. I had to let it go. I was like, I try, sometimes I still try. Going to school in the past was like my excuse to get the beanie off. I would be like, oh, we're going to go to school and you should put a hat on. Now I have to let it go. I have to kind of pick what's more important. And I think in those ways, I've been trying to manage my need to control stuff or like just to, you know, to try to fix things. And I'm like, well, what's really important? Eating is important, you know, being calm, that's important. So I can put my energies that way, staying safe, not hurting themselves. Like those are the things that matter. So for me, that's kind of what I've been doing and saying, well, let's put priorities about where all this energy has to go. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you, Katy. And I think we have time just for one more question. This is from someone in the audience. My father was diagnosed in 2012. My mother is his primary caregiver at this time. I bring them groceries, meds, etc. Over the past 2 years, I have been concerned about my mother's declining memory. She started getting impatient a couple of weeks ago and has started playing mahjong with 5 of her friends again. She is stubborn and will not listen to my advice regarding the need to stay home. How do I convince her to stay home? Zina or Tori?
Tori, you want to take a try?
I'll take it. Yeah, I think it is hard trying to sort of use logic and rationalizing what's going on and like all these new rules that we need to follow for people. When there's any kind of memory problem and this disease, it can make it hard for them to really follow along with why we're having all these new rules and precautions and safety measures. So sometimes, you know, using some different communication techniques, like we talk a lot about compassionate communication, but trying to not argue or use logic with someone because that sometimes doesn't always, you know, end up being a very productive conversation, but instead, you know, if they're not listening, distracting them, redirecting them, changing the subject, using really short, simple explanations, those types of things can help. Sometimes just coming up with almost little fibs about why we have to stay home instead of trying to explain actually everything going on can be helpful too. So some of those different communication techniques, but Yeah, I think that's been a challenge for a lot of people, though, is trying to rationalize this crazy time that we're living in, and we're all still trying to wrap our heads around it. And for anyone that's dealing with these memory problems, it's been really challenging. I don't know if, Zina, you have any other suggestions or thoughts?
I thought your mention of therapeutic fibs was important. That is part of what we talk about when we talk about compassionate communication. And it's not something that we are going to have time to talk a lot about today. But I really encourage all of you who are dealing with somebody who is having symptoms or is diagnosed to call us. We've worked with a lot of families. We have a lot of great ideas. We're really good at helping you come up with the right therapeutic fib that's going to work. And, you know, and I think also a little bit what I was talking about with Katy is this idea of, you know, it's really us that has to change our way of doing things and our way of communicating, because we're not going to be able to convince or control, talking about control earlier, the person who has the disease. And that's a process. Learning that is a process. And there's not only one answer, there's no one right answer or wrong answer. But I really feel that, you know, again, on this very individualized basis that we can help with these situations, and each one is unique.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you, Tori.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, it seems like we've come to the end of our time together, and I'd like to really thank again Zina, Tori, and Katy for joining us today. I want to put up our contact information so that you can all see it here. Again, thank you all for joining us. This is one of 3 of our speaker series. If you'd like more information, please go to our website at alzheimersla.org. We also have our number here for the helpline, 844-HELP-ALZ. Please reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. We're here for you. I'd also like to share there's additional information on our website. You know, we've mentioned COVID and this pandemic, but if there's, again, anything you'd like to learn or have questions about, please contact us. We'd also like to share with you that a fun event we have coming up is our virtual Walk for All. Some of you may have participated in our in-person walk last year, but we will be having a virtual event on October 10th at 10 a.m. So again, please visit our website. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.